God body is simple. It means you see God when you look in the mirror, and that the body of man is God, and that there's no mystery God in the sky. You are God.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Anabolic Mind, where we talk about, we get people from all different walks of life, and we talk about how wellness integrates in their life. And today I have a fantastic guest. She has so many things. I looked her up. I don't even know when to start with the intro, but I'm going to read it. And a client of mine who goes hard in the gym, by the way. So we want to put that first and foremost, right? Okay, but she's a visionary entrepreneur, an accountant, a data scientist, a consultant, community organizer, PhD. Oh my God, CEO. Was named Global Woman in Banking and Finance in 2020, Global Community Development Honoree for the continent of Africa, and received the 2021 Madam C.J. Walker Global Citizen Award. It is my honor to introduce, and that was just a little bit. We're going to get into the rest of the interview. QUANDA Francis. Hey, what's happening?
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
Hey, you're definitely an inspiration. Thanks for coming on, making some time in your busy day. What time do you start today?
Oh, 4 a.m.
Yeah. So you're busy. So I definitely, and you're on East Coast time. So what time is it now?
Yes, I am. Yes. So you know how it is with the different time zones, like.
And it's 5 p.m. right now.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, I know you don't have much time, so we're going to get right into it. Mm-hmm. Introduce yourself. Tell people who you are and what you represent.
So my name is QUANDA Francis. Yeah, I am an accountant, data scientist, PhD candidate. Haven't actually earned the PhD yet, so definitely want to clarify that because my kids are like all over that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So recently named one of 10 women in the world in business to watch. Made history as the first Black woman to establish my own political party and run for mayor of New York City as the nominee, again, of the political party that I established. I ran for New York State Comptroller, also making history as the first Black woman to do that, to seek control of $250 billion in assets and an economy that's arguably responsible for over $1 trillion in economic output. I recently just ran for Congress in New York 10. So yeah, and all 3 ones was done in the last 18 months. So I'm very excited about that because it was new to politics.
And a mom.
Yes.
Yeah, and a mom. That's tough.
Yes.
So wow, there's so much. Let's get into your childhood then. So how did you grow up? What kind of grades did you get in school? Because you're super smart.
You know what? Interestingly, I got great. I was like really smart in school. Very talkative, very liked, athlete. But what's interesting about like my background is that like at 17, with just sort of everything going for myself, I found myself like pregnant, homeless, and just like a victim of domestic violence. And it was just a very, very dark time. And it was very interesting because again, for me to be such a brilliant student, there weren't a lot of opportunities. It was like, oh, you're pregnant, your life is over. So
where'd you grow up?
In Brooklyn, New York. Yeah.
Okay.
So I originally grew up in Weeksville, commuted over to Fort Greene, where I went to elementary school, then was in the Gifted and Talented program, and then went to high school in Lower Manhattan, like right next to the World Trade Center, which is what they consider the financial district.
Got you.
Yeah.
And then at 17, it took a turn. And how did you rally from that?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's books, a lot of soul searching, a lot of eliminating people that in my life at the time that just weren't really a good influence. At 17 is very easily, I didn't know it at the time, but you're very impressionable, so it's very easy for people to influence you in a negative way, and so that's sort of what happened. So in order to get out of that, it was just a series of really deciding that, okay, what life do I want for myself? Do I believe everyone when they say, your life is over, which I did not. I'm like, okay, I got a kid. Next, okay, what do you do now? So the next couple of years was spent, sort of just going after my education. I got married and I had another child. graduated from NYU. My husband was incredibly supportive throughout this process. And my parents were incredibly supportive throughout this process, which was very interesting because, at 17, their expectations of me when I got pregnant was just, it sort of changed. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. With them, not that your life is over, but it's like, you made some very adult decisions. So it was very hard to even have that conversation with them about going through, domestic violence and everything that I was going through, considering that we were living in a housing project at the time, in a housing development. And it's very, young men at that time can be very aggressive. So when you have these two parents that are sort of not involved in that, it becomes you become scared for them when you talk about sort of speaking out and just talking about what you're going through and how, your father would deal with that, deal with this young man that's just out in the streets and doing whatever. So, a lot of books, a lot of reading, a lot of isolating myself from the wrong people that just didn't fit my future.
How was your fitness at that time? Were you working out, or was it a concern, or you had too much to be concerned about to be working out?
You know what? Early on, I would say fitness was not a priority for me. I always felt it was important to sort of keep myself together, right? So, and that, like getting married so early, it was more about keeping myself together more so than health and fitness, which is, so maybe you're doing it for someone else, but it's like, hey, you got to keep yourself together because no one's getting married. No one can keep a man. No one can, you have these girlfriends that are like, oh, you need to keep it tight. So it was important for me to keep myself together. So I didn't eat everything. I was always conscious of that. Always conscious of, how I looked because, that was always a competitive thing that, you look a certain way. People are more likely to help you versus, you let yourself go and it becomes more difficult because now you have people looking at you and just discriminating against you.
That's very interesting you bring that up because, there's such a backlash in society now where people are like, that shouldn't be an advantage. You should be based off of looks. It shouldn't matter when it comes into social situations. But if you're selling, which I always tell my clients, and you're usually selling yourself before you actually sell your product, it's your first impact or impression. You want to make sure you maximize your chances of success. Yeah. So if you look at it just from a business aspect, it's something that, everybody should be investing in, whether you're in front of the camera doing a podcast or your job is in the office building every day. And maybe nondescript. So it's interesting you say that because a lot of people, there's a resentment. Do you feel any type of resentment as far as the pressure as a woman having to look a certain way? Or is it something you just accepted as, if I want to get to this level, this is something I have to do?
I mean, I did early on. I did early on because it's like, okay, if you're in a situation where you work very hard to keep yourself together. And it's like, if everyone around you doesn't need to do that, they are just, and for me, again, it was very different because I, early on before I got a degree, I had worked for BET. I was working at hedge funds. And because I was what they would consider to be well-spoken and sound intelligent and looked a certain way, I was able to get, positions that were what we consider rare-faced and like executive assistant positions, working for very powerful men. So it wasn't that I resented it, but I did understand that when I came in there, like the sort of look that I had, I was like, okay, I'm probably going to get this role. And I started to use that to my advantage. But then on the other side of that, of course, you become not so resentful, but people around you that said, okay, well, if you didn't look like this, you wouldn't have got this position. Or I have a degree and you don't. Why did they hire you opposed to hiring me? So it's not the pressure that came along with that as me feeling like I had to always overcompensate and always had to sort of show up in a way that show people that I'm competent. I'm here because I have above average intelligence and I just happen to be beautiful.
So it worked for and against you.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't have good relationships with coworkers, right? It was weird, but so I didn't have good Well, we had productive relationships, but not the meaningful ones that you would have liked to have with some of the women.
Right.
So, that was.
Do you think that contributes to the amount of plastic surgery and procedures people are having nowadays? Is because they want the social benefits of a look as opposed to not wanting to put the work in?
Peace, fam. I want to take a break from today's episode to personally invite you to the WINJECT community. This is the community where I'm hosting all of my fitness challenges, giving all of my tips, where you can interact with me and my guests. Join the community. It's 100% free to sign up, and we'll see you inside, man. Back to today's episode. Peace and love.
I think it depends on your industry. I mean, for me, as someone after I got my degrees, it's sort of
on a corporate level. Do you see?
On a corporate level, it's different for me because I'm in tech, I'm in accounting, I'm in numbers, an industry that is predominantly driven by men. Mm-hmm. So to begin with, there aren't a lot of women, and then when you think about the way the women look, you're in an industry that doesn't have a lot of women to begin with.
Right.
So there's not, plastic surgery, I don't, in these industries, I don't know that we see a lot of folks in tech that are
interesting.
That are not in good health. Yeah, it's sort of that, and finance either. It's just the nature of the men. They're able to sort of just let themselves go, right?
But you would say the women overall are in better shape in the
It's just
interesting.
I think, and it may just also have something to do with the income bracket that they're in. So or if they're using fitness to manage their stress levels. But a lot of tech companies, they have fitness centers, they have all of these wellness benefits. Companies like S&P 500 have wellness days. They have all of these different retreats that sort of have these benefits of being healthy built in. So it's more like a lifestyle. So when you talk about plastic surgery, that's downtime. So it's
that's a different area. Yeah. I get you. So let's take it to the your second child, right? How'd your body bounce back after that, and where were you at business wise?
God, the second one was that was very difficult. It was difficult because I just had access to more food. I feel with with my oldest daughter, it's just I'm running around. I'm pregnant. I left home. It's just I was able to bounce back from that. So I don't think I considered that. But then it's with my second child, it's I had access to all of this food, so I kept eating, and then my body was totally not the same. And that was very difficult because I was still young. So It's now it's you have 2 children and your body is not what it used to be.
And where were you at business wise?
Business wise, it was no degrees, totally dependent on my partner. So that was that pressure on me. There are hundreds of you, right, that are young that can push out a kid, from it being that successful or, going in this direction. So it's there was that pressure, which sort of made me resentful because, you think about everything that you decide not to put in yourself that is below the surface.
Right.
And you put everything into yourself that's on the surface.
Gotcha.
And it doesn't really help you become a better you. It's just surface, meaning it's for everyone else. Right. It's not for you.
It's not the internal change or lifestyle change. It's just superficial. Yeah. Well said. That's interesting. So then what was the turnaround for you? What would you start doing? When was the shift? How old was you? How much weight did you gain? How much more comparatively than the first pregnancy?
40 pounds.
Big difference.
Yeah. It was 40 pounds. So initially I got rid of the 20, and then that other 20 was just we're here to stay.
And how long did it take you to bounce? How long did it take you to bounce all the way back?
Only maybe 10 years. It was like a time period when it was like a hard reboot in my life. And it's interesting because that whole change came about. That's when I went back to school. That's when I was living in Virginia at the time. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going back to New York. It was like just a hard sort of reboot with everything in my life. So at that point, it was like, I can't be who everyone else wants me to be because I'm miserable. So I have to be the woman that I want to be, the woman that I always knew I can be. So it was a hard reboot in every aspect of my life, not with just my health and fitness. It was, mentally, it was like, yeah, drop everything you're doing. And I was just like, yeah, I'm moving back to New York. I'm going back to college. I'm going to get a degree. It was that sort of hard reboot.
So now they call that making wellness-based decisions.
Yeah.
Right. They call that now, but that wasn't right. That wasn't a term back then, right? But now they call that making wellness-based decisions and putting you first and all of this stuff. But when you did that, that wasn't the most socially acceptable move, right? Because people look at it.
No.
A lot of times when you invest in yourself, people don't really understand. Like sometimes you have to get yourself together so you can give more to other people.
I was selfish. And actually, that was the second one, because in 2002, that was my first one. I went through this sort of 3-day retreat, and they were asking some very powerful questions. But at the time, they felt very powerful. Right now, I'm like, okay, these are just questions that everyone should ask themselves. But it was like, okay, if you don't like the situation that you're in, if you don't like your life, why aren't you making all of these commitments to everyone else? Make a commitment to yourself to do 3 things and make the commitment to yourself. And they're harmful, make the commitment to yourself to never go back. So at the time, I was in a very abusive relationship, and I just cut it loose and never looked back. I used to smoke cigarettes. I stopped smoking and never looked back. And then the third one was just a group of women I had. One was a very, very close friend that was just, I don't want to call her toxic, but after having another girlfriend just sort of drive herself into the FDR drive and just die at 21 and feeling like, I just can't deal. Mm-hmm. That was like a turning point. So I was like, you know what, these 3 things, these 3 people, the cigarette was a thing. And the other 2 were people. And and then I just, gave up everything, including just everything. I didn't date, did for 11 months. It was just okay, there's nothing. So it was that time period where I was just, just revisiting myself. So that happened in 2002. And in 2002, that's when I met my husband, which was very different from the other 2 men that I was with. That was just toxic, as they were very abusive, physically, emotionally. So it was just so in between that time period, it was like I needed 11 months to sort of heal, because it was like I didn't grow up seeing my father abuse my mother. So the question became, okay, what issues that I'm having where I'm just in this situation where I'm just allowing these men to be incredibly abusive to me under the gust of, oh, we're together, we're in a relationship. And it's 4 years. And then it's from teenage, and then you're done. And then I have this small kid now, and I meet this other man that's a lot older. And it's the same thing. And I'm just okay, this is just not working. So I had to when they said make that commitment to yourself, I'm like, you know what? I'm strong. I can do this. And so from that point on, I really literally never looked back. And Then again, 10 years later, it was that we were there again, where it was okay, we need some hard changes, because, these people, you are not who they believe you are. So it's are you going to stay here, or are you going to move on? And the rest is history.
Yeah, and I think that's hard for a lot of people, and I'm glad you articulated that so clearly, so people can understand. Sometimes you have to make the hard decisions, and it's people, your crew, that stagnate you. the people around you, because they don't want you to get ahead, because then they have to look at themselves and their own stagnation. So a lot of times you have to walk it alone sometimes till you attract those people who are really there for you, who are team you. Everybody in your team should be team you. Everybody, who you're supporting, you should be supporting them 100% as well. People don't really understand that, or why you hanging out with the person.
Yeah, and I think, I've always wanted to see the good in folks. And sometimes you have to understand when someone else is damaged and when someone else is hurt, they hurt.
Right.
It's not necessarily that they don't want good for you, but the question is, do they want good for themselves?
Yeah.
And so that's something that one needs to consider.
So where you at now? Let's flash forward to now, like right now. You got up at 4 a.m. You looked in the mirror, you flexed, you hit a gun show, you hit the chest flex.
I did. I'm focused.
And then you made wellness-based decisions, right? You had a healthy breakfast. You probably hit the gym, right? It was the first thing you did. How'd it go down?
Nope. I mean, I wish I did, but
how did it go down?
I took a B12, got myself together, jumped on live, and well, not a live, but a Zoom, and because of the time difference, and just went from there.
Peace, fam. Before I end today's episode, I just wanted to answer a question I frequently get asked. Number one question, how can I get my content out there? How can I interact with my audience? And my answer is always WINJECT Studios. This is where I'm getting all of my stuff edited. This is where I'm posting all of my challenges. This is where I'm interacting with all of my fans and followers. This is where I'm giving all my fitness tips. This is where all of you people can interact with the people who I'm interviewing on the podcast. You can get better insight. I suggest you do the same thing. It's 100% free to sign up, and I'll see you back inside. Thanks for watching.
So what do you think, like, to the aspiring female entrepreneur, percentage-wise, you're talking about the income, right? What percentage do you think they should allocate towards their own personal wellness?
At least 10%, right? At least 10%, because it pays dividends. When we talk about overall health and fitness and stress, right? And look, everyone's programmed to believe that stress is bad. For me, when I'm stressed, for me, it's heightened awareness. So I utilize working out as a way to sort of help me look at stress differently. So it's positive, and my response to it is positive. But it costs more to be unhealthy.
I think so in the long term.
It just does. It's better to prevent than to. But you pay less preventative than prescription. Yes, you feel better.
Yeah, you feel
able to manage your stress, and you're in control. And then when we talk about, again, just the incredible amount of before COVID-19, we had all of these different, health issues in the African American community that seems like you would think that we all were related when you think about like just how many folks that either suffering with diabetes or high cholesterol or any of those things. And it becomes sort of this, you get to this point where you decide medication is so expensive.
Yeah.
When you think about your future self, you have to decide whether or not, if I take care of myself now, what are the benefits to that later on in life? Or again, when we just talk about the sheer benefits of endorphins, right? Listen, working out is the most underutilized antidepressant on the planet, right? And most people don't know that. And so people are walking around and they're incredibly stressed, and it's affecting their health outcomes. It's affecting their overall
productivity. Yeah, it definitely impacts your productivity, and not even long term. It affects your decision making, being nutrient deficient. Your mind is not sharp. So when you're in meetings, you're not really able to access the information that you have because your blood sugar is dropping, because you're not making sure that you're sugar and your food is regulated before you go into meetings, and you're not scheduling eating during your day. So you're peaking and diving as opposed to steadily arcing up all day long. So a lot of different, it's not even the long-term benefits, it's the immediate benefits. It's the self-confidence and feeling of accomplishment that you take from the gym to your workplace. That's where it transcends, that's where you're able to use it, So
and I think,
yeah.
And I think that it's important for people to know that, but I don't think they look at, like, even when I just talked about it and I just heard you mention it, it's like, yeah, there are short-term benefits to it. When you concentrate on the long term, you think about everyone in this sort of Google phase where everything needs to happen like this. But if we start talking about health and wellness as in like the immediate benefits, think about how you feel right after a workout.
Right, exactly.
It took me some time to figure that out. So, and I noticed the differences. And I tried to overcompensate. And when you were like, oh, don't overdo it. I'm like, okay, but I feel different. I feel different when I work out with you versus when I work out alone. So is it my intensity level? Because I want that. But it was the immediate gratification that I was receiving from those workouts that I didn't initially feel like I was receiving when I was working out on my own.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow.
So
keen observation there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your workout regime looking like now? Sometimes we do it online. Sometimes we do it in person because I'm in New York. What are you doing right now?
Yeah. So I'll look at like one of our videos and I'll just repeat every exercise for upper body.
Right.
I repeat every exercise. Well, I only have two, so it's like.
And how many times you training per week?
About 3. Training, and then 2 days out of the week, it's sort of just moderate exercise when I'll go with out with my son and play him in a game of basketball. So not necessarily training, but trying to get some cardio in. Just be mindful of, moving and making sure that I have some physical activity. So I hit that, having that minimum now of 150 minutes of physical activity a week.
Oh, very good. And how's your diet?
My diet can be better. Like, look, Rome wasn't built overnight. Right? So, yeah.
You're doing great, though. You're doing pretty good, though, I must say.
Yeah, it's that difficult because, I don't cook. So, because of that, it becomes very...
it must be easier because you don't have a lot of junk in the house then.
I do have junk in the house, but I have a good junk, like snacks, like
right.
And stuff like that. But like quick meals are going to do me in. Like I'm too. I don't want to say I'm too old, but the burgers 2 and 3 times a week is you can't. Because I feel sluggish. So I know when I have to, like, I'm looking for that B12 in the morning to get me going, or I know that's because I'm like, okay, lay off the beef,
right.
So
you're doing it more instinctual.
Yes.
Yeah. Got you. And before we close it out, what can you give to the female entrepreneurs out there? Again, investing in their health and how that's going to correlate into them making more dollars, short term and long term.
First, prioritize yourself, right? Like, just prioritize you, and that means every part of you: your mental health, your physical health. Take stock of who was around you. Make sure you have a good support system. Listen to the voice within, but don't be your own naysayer. Be your biggest cheerleader. If whatever you're feeling, whether it's fear, whether it's stress, don't look at it as something negative, because stress is a heightened awareness, but it's letting you know that, okay, something is not right. And you can utilize that as a way to get better, right? To stop and take assessment of what's going on that's causing that stress. Because when there's stress, there's a reason for it. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be channeled to look at, as something, we looked at it as something bad. How you respond to stress can really sort of change your overall just, physical being. It's, like, we don't always have to have a negative response to stress. I believe that that's something that should be trained. So change. So prioritize yourself, and that's every aspect of your life. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't, because you can't do everything. But prioritize the things that are going to bring you dollars and cents that align with your goals, That's what I would say. But it starts with prioritizing yourself.
Hey, that's very good. And how can people get at you? If they want to check you on social, if they want to ask you a question, if they want you to do some motivational speaking, who can?
Yeah, so you can send me an email at info@QUANDAFrancis.com. All of my social media accounts are public, so you can also send a DM, someone from the team, or respond to you, and then we can set up I guess a time to either speak or whatever that looks like, because but if for speaking engagements, send the team an email. I love speaking to young women. Again, just with me overcoming tremendous adversity, I feel like it's important to always tell my story, because everyone is going through a struggle, everyone is going through stress, but how we manage that stress, right, is how we come out on top. And the goal is to always come out on top. And how do you always come out on top? You just learn something from the situation. You're always going to meet, there's never a situation when you won't make mistakes, but think of mistakes as lessons. They're only technically really mistakes if you didn't learn anything from it. So every situation, good, bad, or indifferent, get something from it. Figure out if there was a way that you could have performed better, if you could have had a better outcome, and then that's the starting point. And that will be your guiding point, because you know that, okay, regardless of anything, you'll be a better person than you was the day before, because you assessed, you were self-aware, you were mindful. And that's my hoorah with that.
Hey, appreciate you, Quanda. Thank you so much. Guys, there were a lot of gems dropped in this interview, so definitely take note. Thanks for watching. Thank you for coming. And hang on, we're going to outro, then we're going to talk right after, so don't go anywhere.
Okay. All right.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.